What is it that builds strong and healthy next-gen ministries? It might not be what you think. In this episode, we're going to talk about 7 strategies that empower next-gen teams and build a ministry that helps grow the entire church. If you're ready to see health increase in your next-gen ministry and in your church, this one's for you. Let's get to it. Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Brent Parsley Next Gen Leader Podcast. My name is Brent, and I hope that today's episode helps you win in Next Gen ministry. I want to help you with the how of Next Gen ministry so that you can do what matters most. Today is a very special episode of the podcast. It reminds me of when I was young and sitcoms would often have a very special episode where some kid on that show is going to learn a super valuable but really painful lesson, So Steve Urkel, he learns a painful but valuable lesson that we're all supposed to gain some wisdom and insight from. It's not a funny episode, it's super serious. Hopefully it teaches us something important. Sometimes it was terrifying. It was weird. So today's a very, very special episode. Anyway, it's special because I want to include senior leaders. So I want to speak today to lead pastors and even include executive pastors and people like that in this mix too. One of the sort of unique things about me is that I've also served as a campus pastor and an executive pastor, and I've thought about and worked on Next Gen ministry from those seats as well. So I was a campus pastor for one of our campuses that was given a lot of autonomy. So we don't actually do video at our campuses. The pastors preach every single week, and we all have our own student pastors and our own kids pastors. And so I've had some experiences working with all of that. And so today, here's what I want to do. I want to suggest that you share this episode with your lead pastor or your executive pastor or whoever might be your oversight or your direct report or whatever language that you use. Seriously, think about sending it to them so that you can have a conversation about it. Like shoot them the link and ask if you can talk about it later. But I'll say this, if your relationship is currently a little strained, or if you've got an axe to grind, or you're frustrated or upset, or maybe you guys don't have that kind of a sharing relationship yet, well, don't hit send on that link just yet. Probably what you should do is get on their calendar, go have a meeting with them, be as honest as you can about where you're at, and kind of start to work some things through. And then send them the link and have a good conversation about it later. And if you're the lead pastor or you're the executive pastor that's listening in, good news. Seems like your kids or student pastor that's sending you this, well, they feel like they've got a really good relationship with you. So please don't be frustrated with whoever sent you the link. That's on me. I asked them to do it. And it's because I've sat in the kind of the leader chair. I've sat in the campus pastor chair. I've sat in the executive pastor chair. And I believe that today is really important and can lead to healthy next-gen ministries, and that's what you want, and that's what I want for you. And I'll do my best to keep it short so that it won't take up too much of your time. So when I started in student ministry a lot of years ago, I worked for a guy who was actually very empowering and very supportive. Now, that relationship definitely got much more complicated down the road, but that's going to be a story for another time. But as I started there, it was obvious that he believed deeply in the next generation and in next gen ministry. He was a former youth pastor himself. He would often talk about next gen ministry, but not just that, he would also show his support regularly by his actions. And that led me to a core principle that I developed over those years, and it's kind of the big idea and the thesis for today, and here's what it is. Successful next gen ministries are not built by next gen leaders. They are built by the church. So here's the thing. Healthy and successful next-gen ministries are built with the support of the lead pastor, the church body, and the next-gen pastor as they all work together. Fuller Youth Institute did a study several years ago on what churches were doing that were succeeding with young people. So this research, it resulted in a book called Growing Young, 6 Essential Strategies to Help Young People Discover and Love Your Church. So I highly recommend it if you want to grow your church younger and succeed with young people. But those strategies detailed how the entire church contributes to growing young and kind of backs up this idea. So it doesn't just rest on the kids or student pastor alone. When I was pretty new to the church that I started at, became the student pastor, one night we were in the middle of a worship on the Sunday night service, and my pastor called me over. He's like, "Hey, come over here." and he said, hey, this is the last song. Why don't you go up there and receive the offering? Well, I had never received the offering before. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to start. I didn't know how to stop. But the song ended, and I walked up there, and I did the offering. Now, looking back, I can't imagine what it was like, honestly. I doubt the offering itself was very good on that particular night. In fact, some people may have even asked us to give them money for what just happened. I'm kidding. I have no idea, but I bet what really happened was, and you could see this over time, people were really encouraged because the lead pastor was creating a culture where he was allowing young people to lead and supporting them, even knowing that they will sometimes fail. And this is what he often did with me and with others. I could tell you story after story of him promoting me and the student ministry or the particular event that we were doing, and on and on and on. And what I can tell you is that because he believed in it and he put his shoulder to it and he pushed it, and because I cared deeply about it and I worked hard at it, the overall church supported the Next Gen Ministries. And so the result is we grew in health and in attendance. And we've seen the same kind of thing happen at the church where we are now. So I want to suggest a handful of practices if you want to up the belief in and support of your Next Gen leaders and ministries. Now, if you're the kids or student pastor, I want you to listen in and think about how you might be able to contribute to these ideas or maybe even implement some of them yourself with your staff and volunteers. Again, our thesis is successful Next Gen ministries are not built by Next Gen leaders. They have to be built by the church. And so the first thing that I want to suggest is that you, as the lead pastor or the senior leader, believe in your Next Gen ministry. I know, almost every pastor is going to say, I do believe in it, because they were all supposedly youth pastors themselves previously. But what you have to ask is, do your actions really bear that out over time? So the question you should be asking is, are you pleased with where your kids or student ministry is headed? Are you happy with the fruit that's coming out of those ministries today? Have you thought seriously about the kind of metrics that you want to see? And the important ones, right? The important metrics beyond just attendance, but things like how many students are serving, how many students are in small groups, how many students have been baptized, how many parents are engaging with resources midweek, and things like that. So if you don't believe in it right now, can I humbly ask that you go have some meetings with your Next Gen leaders and work on a plan together so that their expectations get really crystal clear. FYI, that phone call or text may strike fear into the heart of your kids or student pastor because they're going to think that they're in trouble. So go easy, let them know some of your expectations though, and then let them feed back on those expectations. And then give them a little time to work on it and get up to speed. Work together until you can actually believe in it. Because if you believe in it, you'll be much more likely to do the second thing, which is talk often about your kids and student ministries on Sunday and beyond. I think this is one of those things that I can point to that caused the church to really rally around what we were doing. The lead pastor would often talk about his deeply held beliefs in discipling the next generation. So I saw his example, and I did the same thing as I became a campus pastor here. I looked for opportunities to highlight what are the Next Gen teams doing. If they have a big event coming up, I'm going to add it into my message somewhere, and I'm going to talk about it. If they had a big night or a powerful camp, I wanted to talk about it and tell the church how proud I was and how cool it was. And I always said how much I believed in what they were doing and how much I believed in our leaders and in our students. And I'm just telling you, it makes a massive difference. And I know what you may be thinking. Well, what about all the other ministries that want the same airtime? Like, I know that I'm going to get emails from the underwater basket weaving small group that wants me to spend some time in my message talking about them and what they're doing. And here's the thing. I believe that you get to decide. One of the strategies of the Growing Young book is that we would prioritize young people and families everywhere in the church. So look, Jesus made kids a pretty big deal when the disciples were trying to push them back, right? He said, no, let them come to me. Because when you receive them, it's like you're receiving me. That makes kids a pretty big deal. So it is good and right to have priorities in your church. And the next generation is the one priority that's going to yield the highest results over time as you sow into it. And in fact, it's going to ensure the continuation of your church. So make it a priority. The third thing is put your kids and student pastors up on Sunday as often as possible. So back in the day, my lead pastor, he would stop in the middle of some announcements and he'd just call me up on the platform and he'd ask me about the upcoming camp or retreat and talk to me about what I was believing for. And you might be like, no, that's too risky. We got a plan, man. Well, keep in mind, this was a large church. And so young and inexperienced me is getting called up in front of a few thousand people to speak about this thing on a whim. And so he'd ask me questions, he'd make jokes, kind of poke fun. And what he was really doing was he was helping me push from his seat. And I was really grateful. And so when I became a campus pastor, I would do the same thing at our campus. When can I bring them up to talk? Can they come up and talk about their upcoming event during announcements or during the message even? Or can I have them come up and can I have them do the announcements? Or can I have them speak on a Sunday? And not just on Super Bowl Sunday, but on regular Sundays as well. So what stories can they come up and tell about the good things that are happening in their ministries? One easy place is to have them come up after any big event that they do and just give a report. Who came? What happened? Tell some stories about what God did. And you can even lead that interview style and ask them questions and appreciate them. I'm just telling you, the church will lean in and be so thrilled at this kind of support. One of the practices that we've done more recently here is I was working on bolstering our kids ministry. And so I would get up on the first Sunday of the month, kind of during the hosting announcements time, and I would tell the entire church about the new curriculum themes in our classes for that month. I'd have graphics ready on the screen. I'd tell them about bottom lines or the big ideas that kids were learning. And then we'd go over the memory verses and I'd make the whole church do all of the motions for the memory verses and learn it themselves. And you know what? They loved it. Even if they didn't have kids in that ministry, they were like, wow, that's really cool that they're teaching that. They're not just babysitting up there. They're teaching that stuff. And during that time, we grew that kids ministry team by a lot. Look, Sunday is just the time where most of your church is going to gather all at the same time so you can utilize it as a platform for your kids and your student people and to build those ministries. And if that's tough, well, you're like, I don't think I can do it. I don't know if I trust them. I don't know if they're ready. That's fine. But what if you practiced with them a little bit? What if you got together with them during the week and kind of help them with what they're going to say, give them feedback, coach them, help them do what you want them to do? The fourth thing that you could do is give opportunities to them and give instant feedback. So I remember one time, my pastor, he sent me up last minute. By the way, I do recommend preparation. I got a lot of last minute experience, but he told me to go up and talk about a youth event that was coming up. So I went up, I gave some stats on teenagers in the world, and I said, but that's not happening with teenagers here. Everybody kind of leaned in and everybody was on board. I felt great. I walked down, and when I walked down in the middle of the service, he immediately said, hey, you did a good job. But what you said and the stats that you gave here, that's not really true. You kind of made it sound like we don't see any bad stuff here in any of the teenagers that we minister to. What he said was, that's okay. Just work on being more specific next time. And I hated it. I didn't like the feedback at the time, but the point was well said and it was well taken. And it stuck with me and it encouraged me. But he gave me a shot, and then he gave me simple, quick, and instant feedback. The church benefited, and I grew. So give them some more opportunities. And when you do, give them feedback right away. They will appreciate it eventually, and they'll grow, which will only benefit the church. The fifth strategy is spend some time with them. So when's the last time that you sat down for coffee or lunch and you just checked in on how they're doing? Not just the latest meeting that you had because you got an email from a mad parent and about something that happened, but just to go and grow your relationship. I'm just telling you that building a healthy relationship will go a long way to building a healthy ministry. You already know that, but the truth is we all get busy and there's reasons why it just doesn't happen. This is honestly one of the things that I wish I would have done better when I was serving as a campus pastor. I had a great husband and wife team. They were doing student ministry. They were doing an awesome job, but I was busy running and doing all the other things that I had to do. And so the thing was, I trusted them implicitly. I believed in them. I trusted them to go and do good work and do it well. And they really did. They grew that ministry considerably. But in my trusting of them, I just let them go. And I didn't end up spending enough time caring for them. And I regret that. And I'm always going to do it differently from here on out. So maybe that's helpful for you. The sixth strategy is, I think you should show up in person and even speak sometimes at the ministry. So pop in to a youth night with some food. Like, go grab a bunch of donuts and show up unannounced. Don't show up all the time. Tell them that you trust them, but show up with some food. Tell the group how much you admire and respect their pastors and how much you believe in them as the next generation. I would always tell our students that I believed in and I respected them. They have a place in our church, and I'm open to their suggestions and their questions. And we love the next generation here, and we want you to contribute. You're the church of today and all that stuff. And you could almost feel it, man, the appreciation and the connection as it was happening in the room. And I think that you should speak once or twice a year in the student ministry. And yes, get this, even in the kids ministry, it communicates volumes to those kids, to those students, to the teams, and yes, to your entire church. So I suggest take one Sunday off a year and go teach in a kid's classroom. Plan it with your student pastor to teach once or twice during the year, or go to summer camp and speak on one of the nights. They will believe you when you say that you believe in them if you'll show up and invest in like that. And then finally, the seventh strategy, support them with actual budget money. Before we go, let me tell you a really terrible but kind of fun story. One afternoon, when I was a youth pastor, I got called in to meet with the pastor and the accountant. So I got the call, come to the office, and my heart sunk. You know how that goes. You're like, oh no, what did I do? And so I walked over nervously and I sat down at the big conference table in the office, and the pastor looked at me and he said, "You are over budget by X amount of dollars." And I'm just telling you, it wasn't small. But he knew what we had done that year. He was aware of the fruit that God was bringing out of the ministry and all that stuff. So he looked at me and he said, it looks like we need to increase your budget for next year. And I'm telling you, I almost fell over. So I overspent that year with vision and bad accounting practices on my part, and I got rewarded with a larger budget for ministry. Now, if you're a kids or student pastor, do not get the wrong message here. I did a bad job. I was hardworking, but I was irresponsible, and the church was in a position where they could actually raise that budget. So I do not recommend this practice to anybody. But the point is, he saw what was happening, how hard we were working. He believed in what God was doing, and he contributed to it financially. Research shows that when you give a larger piece of the budget pie to the next generation, the entire pie actually tends to grow. And so prioritizing young people everywhere, it means a lot. In fact, in Growing Young, here's what they say. Prioritizing young people everywhere means more, much more. How do churches that grow young make youth and emerging adults a greater priority? When they think about budget, strategy, worship planning, programming, community life, theology, and all other aspects of church life, they think about young people. They intentionally pay attention. They go on to say, churches growing young prioritize young people, not just for the sake of making young people happy, but because the whole church will benefit. So I just want to encourage you to consider this when you're planning out next year's budget. You may not have a ton to spend, but what you do have, would you consider contributing a larger piece to that part of the pie in faith that the overall pie is actually going to grow? See what might happen with the overall church. Now, just a quick word of caution to you kids and student pastors. I just want to say, you do not understand all the dynamics that your lead pastor is dealing with. And you're not aware of all the reasons why it may not be a good time to put you up on the platform or to do some of these strategies. You don't understand exactly why their schedule doesn't quite work right now to meet up and all of that stuff. You just don't know what you don't know. So please keep that in mind. They're leading the church. Let them lead it. Let them lead it with their personality and the way that God has gifted them to lead it. What you can do is think about some of these ideas from your chair. So if he asked me to come up on stage, what would I actually say? Am I even ready for that? What stories do I have on tap that have happened recently that I could actually share in a meeting or at a service? Am I leading in such a way that he can really believe in what we're doing? What changes might I need to make to actually help us get there? When was the last time I invited him to come and speak at something? How did I react to the last time that he gave me feedback? You kind of get the idea. So let him lead, and you get yourself ready for when he's ready for you. Look, I really hope this is helpful, and I hope that it'll spark some good conversations between you and even help your church get healthier and grow. If this was helpful in any way, would you please subscribe? Drop a comment in YouTube. If you think it was good enough, give me a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. All that stuff just really helps to continue to get the word out and help other Next Gen leaders. And if you know somebody that's a student pastor, a kids pastor, a volunteer, small group leader, any Next Gen leader that you know, send them a link and be a part of helping to get some hopefully helpful coaching and training out to more great leaders just like yourself. As always, if you want to talk a little bit, you can email me at brent@brentparsley.me, or you can DM me at Brent Parsley on Instagram. Until next time, everybody, I really hope that today helps you win in Next Gen Ministry.